At the end of yesterday's devotional, I gave a teaser that pointed to the beginning of Jesus' ministry, as the Gospel of John tells it, with the miracle of turning water into wine. But on further reflection, I decided that since yesterday we talked about the Epiphany and tomorrow we will celebrate the baptism of Jesus, I might instead focus on the one story in the Gospels that tell us anything about Jesus' life between his birth and the beginning of his ministry. So that's what we'll talk about today, the boy Jesus. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Saturday, January 7th, 2023. I am fascinated by the fact that the four Gospels begin so very differently. Not one begins in remotely the same way. Most of the material in the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, is recognizably similar, if not virtually identical. But they are very different in how they begin to tell the story of Jesus. Mark, in fact, includes absolutely nothing before Jesus' baptism. This gospel account begins with the appearance of John the Baptist in the wilderness, preaching a gospel of repentance for the forgiveness of sins. That leaves us with Matthew and Luke for all of our information about Jesus prior to his baptism and the beginning of his ministry. And in this portion of these two Gospels, they tell completely different stories. Not contradictory stories necessarily, but simply different ones. As I hope you know, for example, only Luke tells us the story of the shepherds in the field keeping watch over their flocks by night, and only Matthew tells the story of the Magi. But both Gospels tell extended stories of events before Jesus becomes an adult, and they share not one story in common. One story in particular has my attention for today. It appears in the Gospel of Luke and is a story about Jesus at the age of 12, the only story in the canonical Gospels about Jesus as a youngster. It's a bit lengthy and deserves a full telling, so let me simply read it here. Now, every year his parents went to Jerusalem for the festival of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up as usual for the festival. When the festival was ended and they started to return, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. But his parents did not know it. Assuming that he was in the group of travelers, they went a day's journey. Then they started to look for him among their relatives and friends. When they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem to search for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. When his parents saw him, they were astonished, and his mother said to him, "Child, why have you treated us like this? Look, your father and I have been searching for you in great anxiety." He said to them, "Why were you searching for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" But they did not understand what he said to them. Then he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was obedient to them. His mother Mary treasured all these things in her heart, and Jesus increased in wisdom and in years and in divine and human favor. I mentioned before that this is the only story of the boy Jesus that appears in the canonical Gospels. As you may know, there were other Gospels that floated around the early church, but which did not make the cut for inclusion in the Bible for a variety of reasons. No need to delve into that question here. All I want to note is that there were stories of Jesus that appeared in other writings, stories about Jesus as a child, but they all tell inflated stories of miracles and healings, all in an apparent effort to establish Jesus' divine bona fides even as a child. So note that in this story from Luke, there isn't anything miraculous going on. Remarkable, but not miraculous. Jesus and his family make the trip from Nazareth to Jerusalem for the Passover, as would have been their custom. As a 12-year-old, Jesus would probably have already had his bar mitzvah, making him an adult member of the community of faith, much like our children who go through confirmation, usually in middle school. The most important word in this story is obedient. The story ends with the remark that after this incident, Jesus was obedient to his parents. But it is clear that he has also been obedient to his Jewish faith in attending to the study of Torah with the teachers in the temple, obedient to the attending of the Passover rituals, in short, obedient to God. It's not a miracle story to establish his divinity. It is a human story to establish his obedience and his fidelity to his Jewish faith, a theme that Luke will come back to again and again throughout this gospel. And that's one of the most important things to remember about Jesus, his complete and total and perfect obedience to the Father. When we return next week, let's begin a walk through a portion of the Gospel of Mark. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.